an additional kind of 2 weeks to digest this information as well, which obviously if that's the will of the board, I'm fine with doing that also.
Are you saying, Doug, that that maybe there's different places that you would make, that we should have the opportunity to look at it and say, well, maybe we add to here but take away from someplace different? Are we, I mean, I sort of am kind of thinking that too. I'm a little overwhelmed, but.
Yeah, I mean, it might,
So,
you know, that certainly since this is the first time we've really seen the numbers also, that's certainly a possibility that one of us might have ideas that we might want to reconsider something as well. But again, with only 2 weeks versus, I mean, the advisory board has spent 4 or 5 months putting these numbers together.
Well, let me say
really
this,
be able
the
to make much
budget,
difference
this
in
is
2
why I
weeks?
brought us together to take and talk about the budget. The budget that gets presented at town meeting, as I alluded to, is the advisory board budget. That's basically the process. The process is, as I indicated, is that it started in October by the Board of Selectmen to take and end up actually identifying what the priorities are and if they're going to end up level funding, increase, decrease the budget. Then you have a budget that you look at in November and finalize in December as a select board. That budget should then end up being passed off to the advisory board for us to have our reviews. That's where the checks and balances that I alluded to earlier come into play. Once we've done the review, as the House and Ways and Means Committee, so to speak, our job is we end up presenting the budget to the annual town meeting, and the folks decide on that. It doesn't mean that if someone on the floor as well as the selectmen disagree with what the advisory board recommends, that it can't change on town floor. It has changed in the past years. In fact, coming into 13, there was changes made on the floor to actually eliminate 2 positions of around $14,000. I mean, this is done from the citizens. So that's basically the process. The townspeople are really the ones that when in the long run are going to end up voting on this.
Sure.
I would like to make a motion that we make this draft document of the no override budget available for review, and that we vote on it at our next regularly scheduled Board of Selectmen meeting on March 12th, May 12th, not March. We're on Monday.
Is there a second?
On May 12th?
May 12th.
May 6th.
No, 12 is on.
The 12th is the regularly scheduled.
I'll second that motion.
Okay. And then is there any discussion from the board? And one thing too that may be helpful, well, I don't know if helpful, but obviously by that point, because this will be my last meeting, obviously acting as acting chairman, so when we meet again on the 12th, we'll have two new members of the board, and then also have reorganized, so then that may be a better indication of then that board is who's going to have to deal with implementing the budget. So rather than tying the hands of whoever that board is, we can leave it up to them. Any other discussion from the board? Okay, we'll vote. Doug?
Yes.
Julie?
Yes.
Diane?
Yes.
And I'll vote yes.
As far as the advisory board, we have one more time that we'll be reviewing this budget, and that's at pre-town. And that happens on the 6th. We will probably more or less, even after this evening, I'm going to end up pulling my board now, whether they want to end up voting this as the budget that we will submit, because we can't really wait till the select board makes some changes to this budget from our perspective. I'll entertain a motion, one way or the other, is to either vote this budget or pending going into the pre-town meeting is to vote that as the part of the article.
See what the select board thinks. Maybe you'll have some better ideas.
But that's putting it off till the 12th. I mean, that would mean that somewhere And that would mean that we would have to meet as a board after the 12th.
That's what we have to do. It's radical. It's a radical.
But there be a segment that night where we're there as well, and they vote on that part, we vote on that part. I'm just a suggestion, you know. Yeah, you guys can take care of your business, and then we could, by that time, you'll have had a chance to take a look at it, and digest what's there. There's a lot there.
There is a lot there, let me tell you.
There's a lot.
Does that sound like something, I'll take a motion on doing that also, as to end up waiting till the 12th and having a joint meeting with the selectmen to end up talking about the budget. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion by the advisory board? Seeing and hearing none. Bernie?
Yes.
Mark? Mike?
Yes.
And I'll vote yes. Okay, our next budget that we're going to end up going to.
Could I ask a question? You said you're going to...
We said we would ask no questions.
You said you were going to open it up to the body after the discussion.
No, I did not say that.
Well, I just had a question for you.
I did not say that. We're not taking any questions. As I said, indicated before, this is a working session for the Board of Selectmen.
Maybe the question I got can help both you and the select board. That's all I'm trying to do is help you guys, and you don't want nobody to talk.
Well, we had a number of meetings that were open to the public, and I didn't see anybody coming to those meetings. The only person that came from a department when we finalized this budget is a COA director.
When you made those changes, combining those departments and combining in the buildings, did you ask any of the department heads or any of the boards or committees in those departments for input on those changes?
These are recommendations.
So the answer is no.
That's correct.
Thank you.
And we still have another budget to go through as well. This isn't the budget.
That was real helpful. Thank you.
Yep. Sure.
This would be over.
Sure.
Okay. At this particular time, someone has asked me to end up taking a 5-minute break. So we'll take a 5-minute break.
So this is just a break. We have one on the budget to go through.
The next budget we're going to go through is with the override, 5,000. If they can speed this along, I'm only going to go through the bottom line numbers because a lot of that hasn't changed. Moderator, did request anything? We left it at 0. Selectmen's budget. They requested $166,251. We allocated $174,500. Advisory board requested $50,500, allocated $50,500. Town accountant requested $31,250, allocated $32,500. Assessor's office requested $66,467, allocated $52,275. You're still going to end up seeing some cuts in this budget because of the amount of money that the school, we have to end up taking that into consideration. Town treasurer requested $69,035, allocated $76,000. Town collector requested $66,745, allocated $56,500. As you remember, we said we're going to join those two. Town council, $45,000. Requested, $52,000. Town clerk, requested $75,352. Allocated, $65,700. Conservation, land planning, requested $3,826. Allocated $500. Planning board, requested $33,400. Allocated $24,200. Board of Appeal, requested $0, allocated $100. Town buildings, which is rent, expenses, and maintenance, requested $105, allocated $105. Town vehicle, gasoline, requested $127,400, allocated $127,400.
I keep this big street list the same.
Pardon me?
You skip street list every quarter.
Oh, that, I'm sorry, thank you. Street listing was $1,500, allocated $15. Did I get that? Yes? Okay. Insurance, requested $1,068,067, allocated $1,052,497. This again will be the one that will change because of the allocation for the water and the light. Requested, including the retirement for town website, telephone expense, and also technology. The total requested was $705,849, allocated $702,649. Total general government requested $2,622,643, allocated $2,567,021. Police department requested $833,799, allocated $825,988. See, there's minor adjustments under all of these now. Building inspector. Oh, did I skip one? Okay. You brought it. Okay. For the fire department, requested $345,622, allocated $339,517. Building inspector requested $72,582. Again, this would be on a per diem basis, and allocated $26,470. Seals and weighted measures requested $1,800, allocated $1,800. Animal inspector requested $2,250, allocated $750. Emergency management requested $1,985, allocated $1,000. Animal control, this is by contract, requested $21,890, allocated $21,890. Tree warden requested $6,888, allocated $0, and that would again would be into the highway department budget. Communications requested $243,414, allocated $235,409. Pest control, and right to know, requested $1,800, allocated $1,800. Public safety, requested $1,532,019, allocated $1,454,624. Highway Department, again, this is combining them, requested $449,885, allocated $503,625. Town vehicle expense, requested $148,293, allocated $147,493. Snow and ice, requested $123,000, allocated the same amount. Street lighting, requested $20,415, allocated the same amount. Solid waste disposal, this is by contract, requested $6,360, allocated $3,060. Cemetery department, requested $222,320, allocated $21,020. If you look at that, again, that goes up to the highway department. Board of Health, requested $102,000, allocated $137,500. Excuse me, $37,500. Council of Aging, requested $107,272, allocated $101,050. Allocated $101,050. Veteran Service, requested $112,000, allocated $100,000. Human Services, requested $321,951, allocated $238,500. Bolton Library, requested $67,533, allocated $65,533. Recreation, requested $36,263, allocated $31,063. Arts Council, requested $91, allocated $100. Historic Commission, $0. Cable, like I said, it's self-funding. Memorial and Veterans Day expenses, $1,500, allocated $1,500. Total cultural and recreation, requested $105,387. Allocated $98,196. Interest on debt, requested $24,400, allocated $24,400. Montezuma Regional intergovernmental charges, requested $2,407, allocated $2,407. Schools committee salary, stipends, $0. Here's one of the biggest differences here. This included the $157,000 for feasibility. Requested $1,444,046, allocated $1,044,046. When you get down, the request was for $7,025,125, allocated $6,653,337. The revenue and expense sheet is next. the town charges, that $6,653,000 is just put in at the expense. Tax levy is the same. You put in the $505,000 if the override passes on the 5th. State aid is the same. Local receipts is the same. We're still not willing to take a chance that we will get the money from processing from MSBA in time for this budget. It may be put off for the next year. We weren't willing to take that as a chance. By not putting it in, we don't get that extra $63,000 in this budget. Here's another change that we looked at. We're strong believers, especially on the board, as you end up paying as you go. You don't use your savings account. So rather than end up transferring money from stabilization, and I think the town administrator alluded to this at Monday's meeting, there's no transfer from stabilization. Ambulance receipts are the same as the last one, nothing from the life board. For expenses, we just brought that figure to $6,653,337. The ambulance receipts are there. The school stays the same as the previous budget. Narragansett stays the same at $431,969. Monty Tech stays the same at $582,508. Special articles stay at $49,645. And if we're going to spend the money to end up doing the building, if CPC doesn't, it's in the budget there as an expense of $40,500. The truck is still in there, $11,045. And the abatements, the fees and deficits still stays the same as the other budget at $219,289. If you look at the overall budget, it's $13,298,621 for a balanced budget. So there's things that have impacted this budget that we had to take into consideration.
Given that while obviously the same amount of money is not cut, there are still obviously dramatic structural changes in governmental organization that come into play with this budget. So for me personally, the same logic that we used to postpone a decision on the previous budget until the 12th would also, at least for me personally, apply to this budget as well, because it does contain those structural changes in governmental organization. But obviously, if anyone has any other thoughts, feel free to.
Sorry, I wasn't here for the whole thing, but I have a concern with funding a cemetery truck and an office move from taxation. So.
No, the cemetery truck is not.
Fund cemetery truck lease and office move from taxation. It's not up top, it's zero, and in the other budget, I have a concern with that. I don't think that we should fund a move or a cemetery truck from taxation. That was just one thing for me, so that like totally stands out. But I was out of the room, I'm sorry, for some of it, but I don't even have the numbers in front of me to even look at like just what's up here, so I'm not comfortable with voting this in today.
Well, one of the things that as far as the truck is, we had a discussion as to ending up leaving them, taking the money out of stabilization and actually trying to take and leave some extra money in the budget to move into stabilization. But that's a two-step process. So on thinking of that as a board, we said this could be a one-step process by putting it into the budget rather than taking our savings account.
I agree with not using stabilization and free cash to balance your budget. However, this year we are struggling, and the townspeople they're being taxed enough. So I disagree with that piece of it. I think that we should do that, and that's a major goal. I think that all of us I know that Julie's spoken about that before, and Doug too, so, but to, again, it's $11,000 cemetery, Chuck, and I'll move that, we'll have the rent that we're not paying, and I just don't want to see it come from taxation for the benefit of the town. Again, that's only my opinion, not the opinion of everyone else, so, but again, I don't, if the rest of you would like to see, I agree with Ken that I don't want to.
Go ahead.
I'd just like to address what he says. It's from taxation. What he means is that we didn't spend, the budget was reduced by the amount of the move and the amount of the truck. So it's paying for it. It's like he said, it's a two-step process, and it requires a 2/3 vote to move money into stabilization or move it out of stabilization. This is avoiding the uncertainty of that, and it's not increasing the tax rate. I mean, it's not increasing the tax rate over the amount advertised by the override.
I'll accept a motion of any kind if there's one to be made.
I worded the way that you did. I would like to make a motion to table, to make this budget available for review, and to table this until the May 12th Board of Selectmen meeting.
Do I have a second? Second. Okay, any further discussion from the board? Not. Doug? Yes. Julie? Yes. Diane?
Yes.
And I'll vote yes.
Advisory Board.
Make a motion that we make the material that we presented today available on the advisory board webpage in PDF form, because we don't need, a million spreadsheets floating around that people can edit. If we make it into PDF form and write across it that it's preliminary, unapproved, with a watermark, then we could put the slideshow and both of these budgets and both of these figures up for anybody that's interested in looking at them. I know some people today were asking if there were handouts available, and they were trying to keep track of them, and it's difficult.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
A motion and a second. Any further discussion by the advisory? Hearing and seeing none. Bernie?
That's a yes.
Mark?
Yes.
Mike? Yes. And I'll vote yes.
And I know that we had discussed not taking questions during the course of the meeting today so that we could expedite things and move things along. But if there isn't an objection from the advisory board, I'd be up to fielding questions.
At this particular time, I want to make sure we got...
Sure. I mean,
want to make
assuming
sure we
everything's
get through.
done. Right. Yeah.
Because of the crunch on time, it was important for us to take and try to get this as expedient as possible.
Right.
And I didn't want to take questions that would have slowed us down to get to this particular point. I don't have any problems with that.
Bethany.
Just a point of information that's come up since we presented our budgets to you guys.
Is there a microphone? I'm
I
sorry,
think
I
I'm
really
sorry.
want to hear your questions. As a board meeting. No, I think you might have to sit on the step. You just take it out. I'm like,
Okay.
what was that for?
New information. Oh, I have to turn it on too, don't I? Hello? It doesn't play through this. Okay, so this sounds weird because I'm talking to a microphone, but it's doing nothing. New information that's come since we presented our budgets to you guys. The Cemetery Commission has approached and asked if they could move in with the senior center in the new building. And I am working with the oversight committee to make that happen. Of course, it depends all on everybody else's decisions, but it is something that they wanted to do, is give up their trailer, and we'd be more than happy to accept them in our new building. My other question is, will these green sheets be available at our meeting tomorrow morning for department heads?
I'm hoping, I know what's coming up at that meeting, so. Make sure that we have it.
Any other questions? Yes, Mary?
You mentioned a new phone system for the new building.
That's correct.
Is that budgeted?
That's, there's money for phones. And what we looked at as a new phone system, when we end up getting some information from what the senior center had done, the cost is much less than what we have now to take it, end up even putting that into the new building.
Any other questions? Yes, Luann?
You mentioned cutting pretty much every department's administrative assistants and throwing that onto the selectman's second secretary. Do you really think she's going to be able to cover 8 or 10 other departments? No. And a lot of our departments are mandated by different rules and guidelines. Board of Health, Department of Health, us, Department of Revenue.
One of the things, like we said, we looked at other towns, and yes, we end up understanding that may not necessarily flow very quickly and easily at the beginning, but when you're all in the same building, that resource is available directly to anyone to use.
So eventually, we're all moving over there too.
I didn't hear.
Eventually, we're all moving there too? Yes. Yes.
But I doubt that that'll happen in the next fiscal year. We won't get everybody.
That's the assumption that we made based upon what we had heard, that the selectmen were going to move into one building and consolidate.
Yes.
Yeah, and follow for what Luann's saying, I was kind of confused on that same thing. My department, I'm on many committees, but let's say planning board, I still have our person in the office, but if I heard Will correctly, this person that's going to be answering the phone is going to be not only just answering the phone, but handling the business of assistants that are no longer in existence. So you expect somebody to be helping somebody fill out a building permit, a notice of intent, a health issue, septic permits. Where the hell do you expect to get this mystery person, and how much money's in the budget for that? Because it's just not a matter of just saying, oh, call the chairman. I have a real job. I'm on 7 committees in this town. Guess what? My budget's your favorite number, freaking 0, okay? So you better give that a lot more thought than just picking somebody and say, oh, by the way, you're it. I think you're taking this way too lightly, the amount of stuff that people for this town do for peanuts as it is already. I think you're taking it way too lightly. Stop looking at strictly the numbers, start looking and start respecting what the people do in this town. Thank you.
You mentioned the town council, you've actually reduced their budget, and Julie just said that we're almost used up all the budget, and we haven't even got town meeting in there. How can you reduce it for next year?
There was a lot of activity at the beginning of the year, and talking with the former coordinator, and they used, in fact, there was a concern about up until November or December that we were going to actually exceed that by the end of January, February. Since that time, there hasn't been as many requests for town council. When you end up going to an administrator, some of those questions are going to be able to be answered. So you won't need to go to town council. There's also the ability to end up, for any department to end up calling into legal services that are provided by the state.
Yes, Kate?
Just between February and March alone, we've spent $14,000 in legal fees. That's where the big chunk's coming. Try to fill that out. So we still have April, May, and June to pay out of town council.
Well, one thing that we do know that the budget actual numbers that we get and we looked at are incorrect, especially talking to the accountant. And we get those sheets along with everybody else, and there's been a number of accounts that there's been problems with. Until that's corrected too, it's hard to judge what's real and what's not real.
My counselor that I've been tracking from the beginning of the year are a whole bunch for the selectman's office, and they are to the penny that have been budgeted at the beginning of the year to what's been paid out is to the penny for every report. So as far as those reports go that I'm talking about are accurate.
I would like to thank Kate for providing the Board of Selectmen that information. It's just trying to deal with the financial crisis that we've had, 13, 14, and now going into 15. You're just kind of lurching from crisis to crisis. And I appreciate the information, and I brought it tonight so that I could bring it to everyone's attention that we are going to be running in a deficit for town council. We've had a number of town meetings, special town meetings, different votes that have all needed, it has cost us, this town, a lot of money from our legal budget that was not anticipated. I'd also like to say that while I understand your position, Kirk, about trying to find the one miracle person who is going to, provide everything to everyone, it's not only is it going to be hard, it may even be impossible. But if you don't like that scenario, I don't think any scenario proposed by the state is going to be any better.
No, I respect if the override fails, because that's doomsday anyways. But I'm saying, if the override is successful, a little bit more thought needs to go into that, just saying, here, sit here, answer the phone. Because if there's nobody to turn that call to, we're in bigger trouble, because growth is what's going to maybe get us out of trouble someday. And if you have nobody in inspectional services, you have nobody actually issuing the permits or following through permitting, we're going to have a big circus on our hands.
Right.
Because what's going to happen is that there's a lot of state statutes and everything has a time frame. And I know a lot of people would love to walk in this town and go timestamp 50 different permits and say, wait 30 days and they're out. Because the town needs basically, permitting is actually a way of defending yourself from shoddy development. And this practice is a shoddy developer's dream. So we better make sure there's somebody guarding the fort. And not personal, but what Will had mentioned, what the board had mentioned, is setting us up for even bigger problems.
Well, let me just say this. There's three things that are impacting the override budget. The school at $145,000, increases in the retirement, no matter how we look at that, increase in, or at least level funding a high amount for insurance, which if we could address that, it would reduce. And the fact that for the feasibility study, we included that as a debt. So you're talking $157,000, $145,000, and approximately another $100,000 in just increases in general government. That's in excess, as you see, of what? Almost $300,000. So you have to end up indicating, even with the override passing, we don't have a magic bullet here. Should this override have been $800,000? Probably. I mean, when you have expenses like that you have to take care of, that affects things. You have to consolidate. Do we like to have to consolidate? We ended up agonizing over this and said, in order for us to end up living within our means, even if the override passes, these are the cuts that we have to make. Not necessarily that we like to take it and end up making all of the cuts. We know that some cuts have to be made. There's other cuts that we even questioned and said, in order for us to get to the bottom line, it has to be made. If somebody has a good answer for us, nobody has come to us and said, we're going to give you another $300,000. We could end up increasing a lot of things.
Bethany?
Speaking of how the budget is increased by the school's increase, Julie, you mentioned something about some change in July that, can you talk more about that?
I thought I had the information with me, but I don't.
Okay.
It's an inspector, no, IGR. What is that name?
It's from the Department of Revenue.
Department of Revenue, they send out guidance. They interpret the laws that were just passed, okay? So when the legislature passes a law, they interpret how it can work. And one of the ways that this particular IGR works is that you can petition to have your assessment reduced, your school assessment reduced, if it's over a certain percentage or under a certain percentage. So I don't have the details with me. I thought I did, but I don't.
But it's reducing the school, not coming up with a creative way to fund it.
It reduces Templeton's assessment to the Narragansett Regional School District.
Yeah.
That's what it would do. So it may be a wash. Some districts have gotten relief that way. It's not ideal, but you can't print money.
One of the things, I was contacted by the superintendent this afternoon to ask if we, at the advisory board, had put in their budgets, or did we end up segregating them for an overrun. And I says, the advisory board can't do that. What you gave us for your budget and for your debt exclusion, we have to include that in the budget. In fact, I talked to her for about 15 and 20 minutes on the whole budget process per se, and I alluded to her that it would be a good idea at some point that, like I said earlier, that the selectmen, the advisory board, and the school committee meet in the future, that they can end up talking to the budget, because we can't keep going on this way, because if they ask for more than what we can supply, we're going to end up having to make more cuts. And I find that unfortunate, because that impacts the whole community.
And I just want to make one comment on that increase in assessment as well. That the $129,000, that $145,000 is not the school district increasing our assessment. As we've heard many times before, we're over the minimum contribution, but we're under our target share. So what happens is the state increases our allotment, our assessment, to get us closer to what they think we should be contributing. And for people like Phillipston, is over effort. So their assessment actually went down this year, whereas ours went up and was increased by the state's formula, since we're under our target share. So you could make the argument then that that 159 or whatever thousand should be cut from the additional assessment that we give. The problem with that is every year, eventually we're going to be at net school spending and we can't cut anything else. And then the state's going to tell us, hey, now you need to increase it 200,000 to get closer to your target share. And there's going to be nothing else to cut because we're going to be at our absolute minimum. So that's where that money is coming from. The actual school's budget only goes up 1.something%. The school's budget went up less than the 2.5%. It's just that Templeton's allotment, Phillipston is paying less next year because they're above target, and we are being required to pay more because we are under that target share. So that is what the difference is there. That's not a school mandated assessment increase, that's a state mandated increase.
In fact, one of the things that is actually in the paper is that there is a school district that is looking to actually sue MSBA for the fact that they require certain things of school districts, but they don't fund them. Chapter 70, as an example. There is selectmen, I believe it's either Sturbridge or Southbridge, who are trying to get through the legislation that the school budget doesn't increase or impact more than 2.5% as far as the town's budget. Those are things that I'm aware of, whether or not they pass, and they will help towns like us who basically don't have any other revenue coming in other than from real estate taxes on houses. We've lost a number of large businesses. It's unfortunate we can't bring in more, because that would help the individual homeowner.
Yes.
I'd like to make sure that everybody is thankful that these four folks down here took on one of the most onerous jobs that will ever occur in this town. And it's not their fault that we gotta cut the budget. And I think we should all be thankful that they spend enough time to get the numbers down on papers to give us some place to start. So I just want to make sure that I thank all these guys on my way out. Thank you all.
Thank you, Mr. Mitchell.
Good night.
Is there anything else? Any other questions? Okay. If not,
I'm kind of thinking enough. Request a motion to adjourn. I'll do that as a joint, if If it's all right with the chairman of the select board?
I'll second.
I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Either board? We have a motion to adjourn, we have a second? We have a second. Okay. All in favor of it?